all the members. Hemant is basically, we were classmates in PUC 2 in Hubli. And after PUC 2, he moved to an engineering course in Bangalore Engineering College. And then B in electrical and electronics. And then he moved to IT field, wherein he worked for about 15 years in the places like Bangalore, US, and UK. So probably more than 3 countries he has worked in the IT field, and currently he has settled in UK uh, after IT field experience, and he is running his own probably consultancy type of firm, wherein he has developed the interest for the last 7 years into studying the behavior of the various people in the world, and like what we do in the Jignasa group, that kind of interest he has developed, and working on helping to develop the businesses across the world to different organizations based on the psychology of the people of different countries. So that's what he's currently working on, and he's more passionate about the Indian culture, Vedic culture, and in Indian history, all such things what we discuss here. So I thought he will be the right person to introduce in the group, and he agreed for it. And uh, thanks to Hemant for agreeing to talk in this session, and I hope he will be part of the group, and subsequently he will be able to share more of his thoughts on this. I think with this background, we can start.
Thank you, Anil. Thank you very much for those kind words. There's no need to thank me. It's me who's thanking you for this opportunity, because I think it's a question of me learning. And the best way you learn is to discuss and share your thoughts. Yeah. So shall I commence or subject for the day?
Yes, please.
Is my voice audible and clear?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, so as Anil said, I worked in IT for quite a while, actually. Moved around to a few countries and things like that. And while I was in the US, I encountered certain situations where, there were a lot of clashes happening due to cultural psychology differences between Indians and Americans. And I began to study cultural psychology and its impacts on work since that time. And it went on, during the course of my career. I kept implementing it, and it made my life very easy, actually. But it's only a few years back that I actually began to think of a career change from hardcore IT delivery into something else, because it was stressing me out too much. I don't think the Western lifestyle was really suiting me, and I needed something a little more Indian, a little more relaxed. So I decided to make a little bit of a change, and then I decided to study more on cultural psychology. And so I made a paradigm shift, really. I just quit my IT completely. And I said, I'm going to go into something else. And so what happened there, however, is during the course of my work for nearly about 21 years working in different places, I was implementing my understanding of cultural psychology, but I did not know the root causes of these behaviors. For instance, why do Indians behave in a particular way? And why are we so different from these Westerners? People in Britain or people in Germany or people in America, they're completely different. For example, their notions and approach towards time is completely different from that of ours. So while I know that, these are the differences, and how do I now capitalize on that in my day-to-day work, I did not know the root causes. And then I decided to do research. I decided to go. And what happened is that it began to suck me in, because I found a vast array of causes of behaviors, a huge array, like geography, history, cosmology, and beliefs, religion. So how religion really impacts our thought system and our behaviors, that started becoming more and more evident to me. And then I had to go in deeper into Hinduism. And once I went into Hinduism, it began to go deeper and deeper and deeper. So I actually started off with something which I thought is going to be small, but it took quite a few years, and it completely changed the direction of my life. So during the course of doing this, and I'm sorry, I actually do not like to use the term Hinduism, because it's a misnomer in my opinion and in my whatever has come out of my study. Prefer to use the word Sanatana Dharma, but just because we have been using Hinduism, I will continue using it. And so while I was doing this, obviously, the interest becomes personal. It's not just academic. You begin to think, you begin to delve deeper, and you want answers. And karma was one thing which was really, it really bothered me for a very long time, because somehow, I read a vast array of books. I found many books on it. I probably read about 5 or 6 books. And while I found a lot of talk about this kind of karma, that kind of karma, all these things, I was not getting the consolidated view which I was seeking, certain answers. And so I had to kind of collate information from here and there, and then come up with some kind of an understanding, which I'm going to share with you. I have no claim that I am right about this, but I would love to share it with you, and solicit your opinions, of course, after the session. So with this preamble, I'm going to commence on this topic today. So the approach that I'm going to take is, this is the same approach that I have a friend in Oxford, his name is Michael Gates, and he runs an organization on intercultural management. So I just became his friend over the past few years. So he is an individual who's extremely interested in karma, and he's a very philosophical kind of character, very Aristotelian person. So he heard my thoughts one day, and then he wanted me to give this presentation to some of his friends who were from Oxford, University of Hungary, and Edinburgh, and things like that. There were about 7 or 8 people. And none of them were Hindu, but it was very interesting. So I'm going to take the approach that I took with them in this session. So I have mentioned in this document, as you can see, that there are certain preambles when we go into the understanding of karma. So the first one that I have mentioned over here is one of the primary attributes of God. So when we talk about karma, to me, there are certain things that come to mind. I think the first prerequisite is you are at least agnostic, or you are a believer in God. You cannot be an atheist, because there has to be some governing force in this world. That is the first prerequisite. The second one is about, when we talk about God, of course, different people have different notions of God. But to me, God is that governing force. And the best definition of God as an acronym was given to me by an individual in Halebid and Belur a very long time back. He was a guide, and he was showing all these beautiful statues with a small little mirror and using the light to point areas of the statues. And he said, God stands for generator, operator, destroyer. I had never heard that before. It still resonates with me. So what are the attributes of God? We have in different religions, we have different attributes of God. Some are common, some are not. But in my view, one of the chief attributes of God is that of justice. And I'm talking about absolute justice, not just the kind of justice that we know as humans. Absolute universal justice, I think, has to be an attribute of God. Otherwise, the absolution does not make any sense. For instance, if you take the example of Adolf Hitler, who massacred 6 million Jews in the most horrifying manners imaginable, the concentration camps, and the way in which the Jews were massacred. So from a Hindu context, the Papa Karma that was generated is humongous. And we as humans, what punishment can we accord to Mr. Adolf? At the most, we can give him one death. So where is the proportion of justice here? That's a question mark. If you look at several people like that who have committed genocide, and people like Pol Pot in Cambodia was responsible for the killing of more than 2 million of his own people. So these question marks come up, that where then is this justice happening? Is it even possible for this justice to be conducted or accorded in one life? So these were the questions, that kind of, as a preamble, led to more investigation into what really karma is and the validity of its existence. The next question that came up in my mind was a single life versus multiple lives. Now, we all know that in most of the Abrahamic religions, it's all about a single life. And these are just my thoughts. There is no offense intended to any religion or whatever. Just like to make that clear that these are simply my thoughts, and I respect all religions and all people equally. But I'm just kind of trying to approach it from a logical perspective. So if we look at the theory of one life, I see personally certain issues in it. The first issue that I see is, and again, we are talking here about justice. For example, in the Abrahamic religions, we have, God at the end of a certain period of time, the day of judgment. He appears and he separates the good from the evil. The good are sent to heaven and the evil are sent to hell. And this heaven and hell are eternal, absolutely eternal. So essentially, there is just one creation, according to the Abrahamic religions, and there will be one end, and that will be the end of the story, really. So my thoughts were a bit statistical in nature, because I used to be a student of statistics a long time back. And one of the questions that came up was this. So if God were to do justice between everybody on earth and separate the good from the evil, the sinners from the people who do good. Now, one of the challenges obviously that we have here is there is no person who does absolute sin or absolute good. It's a mix. Some people will definitely do some good and some bad in life. Even the worst sinner might do something really great in life. That's how it is. So in this imbroglio of things, how does God do justice? How does he define? This is data-based. This has to be data-based. He has to have some data. Because when we are talking about justice, it has to be absolute. So what does God do if he finds a person who has done 50% good and 50% bad? There's no answer. What does God do if a person does 49% good and 51% bad, or the other way around? And so on. So where does he draw the lines, basically? So these are big questions, really. And there are no answers to these. One of the standard answers that you generally hear when you ask such questions is, we cannot question God. God works in mysterious ways. That, to me personally, doesn't make sense. So the second problem that I have in understanding this is this. Let's say there's a 5-year-old child and there is a 30-year-old person and there's a person who is 100. So 5-year-old child, let's say, dies at the age of 5. One person dies at the age of 30. The other person dies at the age of 100. Now, the person who has lived for 100 years has much greater opportunity to do either good or bad from a statistical perspective than a person who is 30 or a child who is 5. Now, according to Abrahamic religions, any child who dies as a child automatically goes into heaven. Okay, but then what about the 30 and what about the 100? So there is no equal opportunity or equal distribution, let's say, in order to, perform, your deeds in life. So it would become extremely difficult, I think, to have a judgment unless everybody was allocated the same number of years of existence, of life. This is the second question. The third question that comes up is, and this is, very evident to everybody, and it's a very standard aspect. That is, we often find that, there's a person who's probably 100 years old and he or she has done all the wicked deeds in life, but there's nothing happening to them. They're okay. They're healthy. They're strong. They're fit. And on the other hand, we might have a person who is a very good person, who has done a lot of good deeds in life, who is very helpful. And that person suffers from a lot of diseases, meets with accidents, bad things happen to that person. So why does this happen? So again, if we go back to Abrahamic religions, the answer is you cannot question God. God works in mysterious ways. To me, it doesn't make sense. Of course, there are other explanations in the Abrahamic religions about, good and evil, and, but purely from a statistical perspective, these were, my thoughts. And then I've also mentioned there about eternal linearity versus cyclic phenomena. So one thing we always notice is that in these Western cultures, there is always linearity of thought. In the sense, there is one, in the cosmology perspective, there's a creation, there's a destruction, end of story. For them, time is linear. It goes in one line. But for us in India, time is not linear. Nothing is linear. Everything is cyclic. There are certain reasons for this. We in India were very keen observers of nature. In nature, everything is cyclic. The moon goes around the earth goes around the sun, the planets the cycles of creation and destruction were very evident. So here we find a lot of influence of geography on human psychology, development, thoughts, philosophy, everything. So if we look at these countries, the cold countries, and if we go back around 1,500 years, the only thing that they were bothered about was surviving the winter, because there was no technology. Winter would come year after year as a killer, because during those 7 to 8 months of winter in those days, they wouldn't get food, they couldn't hunt, they couldn't do anything. So they probably had around 5 to 6 months a year during which they had to prepare, and they had to wait, during the winter, just overcome it, survive the winter basically. So they developed an aversion to winter, and winter is cyclic, it is a part of nature. But because of their psychological aversion to winter, they became anti-cyclic. Yeah. So this is just a brief mention about, this is a very vast subject in itself, really. So this is just a brief mention about, the difference between their linear understanding, one life, one death, heaven or hell, end of story. But for us, it's round and round and round and round. So bearing this in mind, let's get into what my understanding of, karma is. I think we have, Anil was kind enough to share some videos, by eminent people at this. I saw some really good videos about karma and, things like that. So I'm just sharing my thoughts here. I think most of you would be aware of, this particular diagram, but let me just reiterate. So, and I'm keeping things a little simple because I don't want to go into the vast array of karmas. There are a lot of different versions and descriptions of kinds of karmas. So I'm just going to keep it focused on the core, okay? So that we just have a clearer understanding. So we have life in our system. We have life after life after life. So in our idea of cosmology, if we refer to the cosmology in the Vishnu Purana, so one of the largest cycles of creation is the Mahamanavantara, where the creation happens and lasts for 3.114 trillion years, and then at the end of which there is a dissolution. And in this Mahamanavantara, we have 72,000 kalpas, each kalpa which lasts for about 4.3 billion years. And one kalpa is called the day of Brahma, and the next kalpa is the night of Brahma. So there is a creation, there is an existence and a dissolution, an existence and a dissolution, which goes on 72,000 times in this entire Mahamanavantara. And within each kalpa, again, we have sub-cycles. So we have Manavantaras. We have 14 Manavantaras, each of which lasts 306 million years. And so if we look at one particular kalpa, in the beginning, there is something which is called a Sandhya Kal, where there is only water on earth. And there is the development of life. So we can actually see evolution over here. It's there. I think if you look into our scriptures, if we look into our Vedas and Purans and everything, we will find a million answers there. I was absolutely amazed when I looked into this cosmology in the Vishnu Puran. 1.728 million years of water, after which life begins. And over the next 306 million years, there is an appearance of man. And then there is a Sandhikal again. And then again there is, so it happens 14 times like that. Each of this is called a Manavantara. And within the Manavantara, we have 71 Divya Yugas. And each Divya Yuga has got 4 yugas, which we all know about: Satya Yuga or Krita Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and then Kali Yuga. So I'm just giving this context because we have to understand the theory of karma. So if a life is originating there, this can go on till the end of the kalpa, according to Krishna, I think, in the Bhagavad Gita, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, we are talking about huge timelines. We are talking about billions of years. So there can be millions and millions and millions of lives. So in these millions of lives, in human form, essentially, all the karma that we generate in our life, we generate karma. Everything is karma. Even thought is karma. So everything that is generated goes and gets stored in what I like to call a ledger. So it is the Sanchita karma, of course. And in the next life, a certain fraction or portion of that Sanchita karma is allocated to any individual. And it is this prarabdha karma which decides what we are going to do, what is going to happen to us. This is a karma phala, basically, which is coming from the Sanchita karma. And once again, while we are undergoing that karma phala, we are generating karma again, which is again going back into the Sanchita karma and probably getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And that is what is trapping us in this samsara. So we are caught. Now, in our very first life, if we do not do karma, or if we add nothing to the Sanchita karma, end of that life, we'll be in moksha. So we will come to that in a while. But that doesn't happen. So, we keep on adding to the Sanchita karma ledger and recurring lives. So now, since we have a lot of karma sitting in Sanchita karma, we have to be born again because we have to repay that karma. Now here, we are talking about universal justice, which we just discussed a little time ago. Whatever good we have done, and I'm using only a few versions of varieties of karma over here. I'm using papa karma, punya karma, and prayashchita. So whatever papa karma we do, it's going and sitting in the ledger. Whatever punya karma goes and sits in the ledger. If you do any kind of prayashchita or repentance, there can be a difference to the degree of that karma that has gone in there. And in certain rare instances like Valmiki, where tremendous penance is required, which ordinary humans may not be able to do, that entire karma may be dissolved. Yeah. So we have this cycle going on, where I sometimes like to think of it as, standing in under a shower with a overhead tank of water above, and a certain amount of water falls on top of me, and that is my prarabdha karma. And in the meantime, I'm pumping and sending more water into the tank. It's kind of cycle, just a loose analogy, really. Yeah. So, does anybody have any questions at this point? Anil, can you hear me?
No, you are audible.
I'm audible, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to move on to the next part here. So I think we have already talked about this. So I'll just go through it very briefly. So one life, this is the karma, prarabdha karma allocation that is happening to us. So anything that happens to you, right from birth, everything is decided. Your conception, where are you going to be? In which womb are you going to be conceived? Are you going to be born rich? Are you going to be born poor? Are you going to be born with a disease or healthy or born with it? Whatever it is, all these things would be part of that. And here is where Vedic astrology comes in. So according to our system, it is the planets that are the custodians of karma, basically. And they are the managers of karma. So our birth chart is a snapshot of our prarabdha karma, basically. So from birth until death, whatever we go through, and again, we can see here at the bottom, in that life, we're generating karma, and we can see the arrow going right up to the karma ledger. Yeah. So I think this is clear. I'm just going to move on to the next one. Yeah. So here, a slight deviation, but it is intentional. It is deliberate, because we will come back to this. It's very important. So we have a philosophy. We have in India, we have 6 different orthodox philosophies. I'm sure you're aware. And one of them is Sankhya. So, or Samkhya. So this was written by sage Kapila, I believe. And there is a reference to it in the Gita also. So it is brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant. In the West, they have something called Jungian psychology, where it talks about the mind and perception of and how the senses interact with nature, etc. It's very interesting. Sankhya is much more detailed than Jungian psychology. It's a pity sometimes I feel that, so much of wealth of knowledge of India is lying untouched. It's mystifying at times, but then I do understand, because it took me also a long time in my life and a certain change in direction to kind of even go and put my head in there. So anyway, coming to this, according to Sankhya philosophy, which really talks about perception and reality, Prakriti and Purusha. So, and these are 2 keywords that come out of Sankhya. So Purusha is, of course, Brahman, this universal spirit, the cosmic spirit, and Prakriti is nature. So there are 3 states of mind, essentially, that are described in Sankhya. The first one, of course, is tamas, which is delusion, ignorance, darkness, lethargy. And according to our philosophies, karma, as I said, is not just deed or action, but it is also thought. It is also your entire approach. So when you have a tamasic predominance, and again, a human being generally at any point in time could be a combination of all these things, and there could be a certain predominance of a certain characteristic or state of mind. So the tamasic one, which is of complete ignorance, where there is the light of knowledge really hasn't come into the mind, is a kind of passive karma generator, but it generates karma. It will generate karma. So an example of tamasic karma could be, these are my thoughts. A certain individual, with the belief in religion, that my religion is superior, goes and kills a person from another religion or whatever. Now that could be tamasic, because it is out of ignorance and delusion. So there is a papa karma generated out of a tamasic mindset. And then we have the next one, which is rajas. So rajas is more about passion. It's about desire. It's about ambition. It's about achievement. It's about, going and getting it done. So it is more active. So there would be understanding. There would be a certain extent of intellect here, but it would be about self-desire. It would be about self-gratification. It would be a person wanting to, achieve his ambitions of becoming a leader or becoming whatever, or becoming a CEO or whatever. So this kind of person would have, a rajasic mindset. And he would be aggressive, he would be a go-getter and things like that. So could be called as a papa and punya, active karma generator. So the person knows that probably, so if this person with a Rajasic mindset, he would probably be the person sitting behind and pulling the strings, and getting things done. So for the previous example which I used, it could be that. So now the third kind of mindset that we have, which is described, is sattva, the sattvic mind. And the sattvic mind, of course, is good, positive. There is an element of selfless service in it. And there is no expectation of a result, basically. So achieving of a sattvic mentality is not easy. It is certainly not easy. So let's just leave this as is, go to the next slide, and then come back to this. The next page, rather. Yeah. So as we have seen, there is generation of karma, which goes into the sanchita karma, prarabdha karma, allocated in our current life. Again, we are generating karma, and this cycle keeps going on and on and on and on. So how do we break this cycle? And what does breaking of this cycle really mean? So in my understanding, the breaking of this cycle in its entirety is the steps towards achieving moksha. Moksha essentially, or let us say, the Jivatma going back into Paramatma, Samadhi, or the individual soul attaining liberation entirely. Breaking away from the entire bondage or Maya of Prakriti and getting reabsorbed into Brahman or reabsorbed into Purusha, essentially, is moksha. But how do you attain that in this cycle? The steps are not difficult to understand. They're very logical, actually. They make a lot of sense. So the first step is to stop generating karma. It's like, that example of the water shower that I talked about a little while ago. We have the prarabdha karma water falling on our heads, and we are still, sending water into the tank. So the first thing that we have to do is to stop sending the water into the tank. So we have to stop generating karma. So nothing now gets added into the sanchita karma. That is step number one, which I have mentioned over here. Stop generating karma, break the cycle. Step number one. And you can see a green tick mark there. This is actually in an animated form, but I thought I'll just use the static version. Step number two. Again, it's very obvious. Exhaust the water in the tank. That's it. So we have to exhaust the sanchita karma that we have accumulated. And once your sanchita karma becomes zero, you are liberated. It's moksha. There is no more karma binding you. It is karma that binds us to Prakriti, which binds us into Maya, which binds us into this existence. But you have this one life. How are you going to exhaust the millions of years of sanchita karma that has been allocated over there? And it's sitting there. So what's going to happen? How are you going to do it in one life? It may not happen in one life. Now, this is the beauty that we have in Sanatana. There's a lot of statistics going on. There is a lot of reality and realism going on. There is no fantasy here. If you really put on a statistical hat and look at it, You can really see the dips and the curves and the sinusoids. And that is exactly how it happens in nature and in reality. Everything is cyclic. For example, when we get a fever or we get an infection, we have the fever, but it doesn't go away just like that. It will come back in a wave, and then the third wave, and then the fourth wave, and then it dwindles and reduces and it goes away. So everything in nature works like that. There is nothing really that works abruptly. There is nothing instantaneous, typically. So here we see this notion again, and that of the exhausting of the Sanchita karma is not going to happen immediately in this life. Okay. So, but now, step number one, I'm sorry, I got caught up in step number two. More important is step number one. How do we even stop generating that karma? So according to Krishna, the only way in which you stop generating that karma, and this is not just what Krishna says, it's also there in the Upanishads, is by being sattvic, is by doing what is called nishkama karma. So karma again can be looked at from two perspectives, sakama karma and nishkama karma. Sakama karma is obviously would be, when we say kama, we mean kama. And kama, of course, is desire, basically. So when we say sakama karma, it is we are doing whatever karma that we do with a certain desire in our mind. For example, I'm going to work very hard to get this promotion, sakama karma. I'm going to, contest this election with everything that I've got, sakama karma. So anything, it could be good, it could be bad, whatever it is, that would be sakama karma. Nishkama karma is the karma without desire, with no desire whatsoever. That is selfless service. That is pure selfless service. But now, how does one do that? And why would one do that? What would be the rationale in doing that? So, there is actually a very simple rationale behind it. And to me personally, it links in with what we call Jnana Yoga, the understanding. Now, how does that happen? The most famous verse, probably, in the Bhagavad Gita, okay, which I mentioned in the next part over here. Yeah. Karmanya vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala heturbho ma te sankostva karmani. The answer lies in that. And it's really common sense. So it's like this. We have our Sanchita karma. We have a prarabdha karma that is going down to us for our particular life. We do not know what that is. Even with highly expert levels of understanding in Vedic astrology, you cannot do a 100% prediction. So you do not know what is coming in. We have no idea what is really coming in. Am I going to be hit by a bus tomorrow? Am I going to win the lottery tomorrow? Is something going to happen to me tomorrow? None of us really know that. So this is the element of predestination that exists. So I think we have, we always have this discussion about free will versus predestination. So here, according to our system, the prarabdha karma element is, whatever has been allocated to us for that particular life. It is the prarabdha karma which is going to decide the karma phala, that whatever we are going to get in this particular life. So here we might feel For instance, I'm at work very hard to get a particular promotion, and I get the promotion. And then I congratulate myself and I say, I'm proud of myself because I got the promotion. Now, I am giving a propagation to my ego. That promotion was not done by me. That was decided by my prarabdha karma. It allowed me to work hard to go and get that promotion. But I am now not being wise or humble enough to see that force. And I am getting stuck in this delusion. So there is a very subtle point at which you decide whether there is a free will or whether there is no free will. There are certain points at which we do have free will. And the other element is these old karmas that come in, they cause us to do certain karmas too. For example, and many of you, I have faced this kind of situation in life, and you might have also. There's something that I am going to do. There's something in me which is telling me not to do it, that it's wrong, that it's probably wrong, but I still go ahead and do it. There is a force that drives me, which I cannot control, which makes me do it. I have experienced that. And if something like that happens, it means that there is a force of karma from behind that is making you do something intentionally. That might be to balance somebody else's karma, because all our karmas are connected eventually. Whatever we do, most of the karma is what we do to others. So there's always a connection. So coming back to this point, karmanyavedikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, what Krishna is saying is, you just have no idea what the prarabdha karma has decided for you. So why are you even bothered? Just do your action. Just do what you have to do with your complete soul. And that is the only right that you have, really. Nothing else of what is going to happen to you is decided by you. So if we understand this entire construct of karma, of sanchita, prarabdha, and all these cycles, and if we understand that, yes, what is going to happen is not controlled by me, you are not going to do things with desire. You're going to leave it to the Almighty, essentially. So this part, seems to me to be the core of Jnana Yoga. And a realization of that gives you already a liberation in you to stop acting with desire. So that is my understanding. So step number one, breaking off this particular cycle of karma would be done by doing nishkama karma, essentially, or having a sattvic mind and giving up the fruit of desire, or the desire of results, basically. So I've just mentioned in these two yellow pages over here, little post-its. Nishkama karma, when we do nishkama, if let's say that in this particular life, I have a realization now about this entire karma construct, and I want to take my first steps towards moksha. The first thing, obviously, that I start doing is nishkama karma. Whatever I do it with no expectation, and with my already, the sense of liberation that I already experienced by taking this particular step. So the 2 points that I mentioned here is, prarabdha karma has no effect on the individual since he bears everything with equanimity. So essentially, this knowledge gives you a huge amount of strength to bear anything that happens, because you have now understood that everything is karma and karma phala. Whatever everybody is getting in this life is due to their past karma. Whatever anything is happening to anyone is due to their past karma. And the magnitude of this knowledge, if absorbed very correctly in the intellect, gives you a sense of liberation, gives you an understanding and equanimity, basically, to bear anything. So what happens is when you gain that particular kind of equanimity where you're able to bear anything with equanimity totally, and you're not perturbed, you're not affected, you're not, first of all, you're not generating karma, and no karma is affecting you. That's the first thing that's happening. Yeah. And an example of this would be Krishna again, and towards the end of his days, really. So when the curse of Gandhari, I think it was, that, his children and grandchildren and his entire Vamsha will massacre each other, and they will, kill each other on the banks of the Yamuna. And it happens in front of his eyes, that his children and grandchildren and everybody are massacring each other, and they all kill each other. And he just watches it because he knows it is the play of nature. It is karma. He has got this small understanding smile on his lips. He is equanimous. He has equanimity in him. He is not impacted really by it. So that would be an example of ultimate nishkama karma. So here, by doing this, you're breaking the cycle of karma, in the sense you're not generating any karma anymore. That is achievement of step 1. Of course, it's not easy, but that's the way. The next part would be now exhausting of that sanchita karma. Now, obviously, if there is karma lying for millions of years sitting up there, it's not going to be exhausted in one life. So then what is going to happen? What is going to happen is, according to our systems, when you are now, in this life, you have begun the process of doing nishkama karma. And it's not easy, because you will keep falling back into the world again, and you have to keep on. It requires discipline, it requires your own karma, whether you're being pushed towards that, and so many different factors. Maybe it's like a spark, it comes and it goes away. You don't know, but that's how nature works. And so what happens is, in this life, if you have initiated the process of nishkama karma, and then you come to the end of your days and you're born again, according to that prarabdha karma again, according to that system, whatever you're born as. So when you are born and you commence your life, whenever we are born, there are two elements that, in English, or in typical science and psychology, we call them nature and nurture. We already have this, we don't have to learn it from these people. We call it sanskara and samskara. Samskara is that which we are born with, and sanskara is that which we learn. So when you have begun this process of nishkama karma, you would be reborn with that samskara, if it is strong enough. And in that next life of yours, it's going to come back to you one way or the other. And again, also, there's an element of prarabdha karma. There's a lot of dynamics which I can visualize that is going on over here. And eventually, you're going to pick the strings up. And once you pick up the string of nishkama karma, your sanchita karma starts getting exhausted. Because what is essentially happening is, by wearing this cloak of nishkama karma, you're not, number one, you're not generating karma, you're not being impacted by any karma. You're not being impacted, you're equanimous, you see. So the sanchita karma is like getting more and more exhausted. And again, it has to go into the next life, probably. So now, whether this momentum of karma is going to continue or not, I don't have an answer for that. I don't know. It might, I don't know. But this kind of an understanding makes sense to me because it's a very realistic kind of thing. It's not something which is just fantasy. So that's it. So essentially, number one, by nishkama karma, you're stopping the generation of karma, and then you have to exhaust this. So if that process goes on and on, so what I have read is that many saints, sadhus, and these ascetics, the great people who did a lot of tapas and stuff like that, they ask, and this is a general question which I have found in many of these karma discussions is, what do you do? Because you are still undergoing that karma from prarabdha karma. You have understood everything. You have acquired jnana yoga. You have understood this entire the cosmic phenomenon of karma, and then you are now ready to liberate yourself through nishkama, but you still get hit by that prarabdha. So there is nothing that you can do. You just have to wait. That eternal justice system, which we talked about initially, the universal eternal justice system has to be completed. So this, to me, encompasses the notion of eternal universal justice in every way. It makes sense personally to me. And there is a lot of validation about this if we go through our mythology. I don't like the term mythology. It's not myth. But we in India, we after 300 years, 300 and almost 50 years of British staying in our country, we have changed. So we take a lot of things, at half value, really. Sometimes I feel, and of course I'm as guilty, really, honestly. So coming back to this last part again, where obviously Gita in the middle. So just the mention of two incidents about karma and their timelines. On the left hand side, we have Ram standing behind a tree, and he's going to shoot Vali. When Vali and Sugriv, battle it out. And then here we have Krishna. So essentially, when Krishna is dying and he is shot in the foot by this hunter, who mistakes his foot for the head of a deer. And Krishna, he nears his death immediately after his children and grandchildren massacre each other. And he goes and he lies down on the banks of the Yamuna, puts one foot over his knee, and he's reflecting upon everything in life. Now this, mind you, is an avatar of the Supreme, but even he is going through all this karma, including pain. So the arrow comes and strikes him in his foot, where his life resides. And when this hunter comes there and he sees what he has done and he has shot Krishna, he begins to tremble and cry. And that is when Krishna tells him, he says, no, he says, do not cry. In a long past life, I shot you in your back. You were Vali and I was Ram. This is my karma which has come back to hit me. So, well, if the good Lord himself is subject to it, what about us less mortals? So that is just to kind of talk about the kind of timelines that we have with respect to karma. So we find a lot, I think, in our entire, I did put another thing over here, just a picture, just to give an idea about what I talked about earlier, the Hindu cosmology that's in the Vishnu Purana. So this is the kind of timelines that we're talking about. And then where we see the creation and dissolution, where we have 3.114 trillion years, that is called one breath of Vishnu. And at the end of the dissolution, the absorption back into Brahman again lasts for the same duration of 3.114 trillion years. And after that, there is again a creation of the next Mahamanavantara. So it's like a pulse form of creation and dissolution, which is eternal. And that is why probably it is called Sanatana, which means eternal. So yeah, so this is my very basic understanding of the theory of karma. And of course, there would be several questions beyond this. I will leave you with a few questions. Where does it really come back into zero? After the end of a kalpa, does all karma get neutralized? At the beginning of the next kalpa, does it pick up from where it left off? I'm still exploring and trying to get some answers to certain questions. I haven't been able to get all answers, but it's pretty interesting, And of course, as I mentioned earlier, that in our system everything is cyclic. So there are cycles within cycles, the kalpa, the manavantras. So if you look at this particularly, one dot, if it represents, the top of the line is the Mahamanavantara, which is 3.114 trillion years. So I have a series of dots over there. So if we can imagine that there are 72,000 dots like that. And then one of those dots is now representing one kalpa, which is 4.32 billion years, and so on. So until eventually we come to, the Mahayuga or a Divya Yuga, which is 4.32 million years, which is Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and Kali Yuga. And here, as we know, in the Satya Yuga, there is Dharma, which is 100%, at 100%. It is standing on 4 legs. And it reduces by increments of 25% until it comes to Kali Yuga. So once again, the whole cycle gets regenerated. And, so it's amazing, really, to me. And I think that brings me to the conclusion of, of this particular session. And does anyone have any questions? And if anyone wants to correct me, please go ahead, because this is not about me. This is about me learning too. So I humbly request you that please do not hesitate to correct me if I have gone wrong anywhere, because I'm on a quest of knowledge, really.
Thank you very much, sir, for this very nice talk. Now the session opens for question and answer. So I think Nagi, you have a question?
Yeah. I have a question. Yeah. Actually, I have gone through several karma presentations, Gita and all that, so strong believer in all that. But during your presentation, just a second.
Sure.
Yeah, but during your presentation, this question popped up actually based on your presentation. It was based on an interesting observation.
Nagi, 1 second. I think you muted both of
Yeah, I lost the voice.
I think one of them has to be enabled. Let me try now. Can you
hear me now?
Yeah, now it is fine, please.
Okay. See, the reason we have gone through all this karma discussion and all that we believe in Punarjanma and all that, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think the general principle that we all, that's there in our culture is that ultimately, like you said, the Jivatma has to merge with Paramatma. And in that journey to become pure, you go through many lives. Okay. So if you said that theory aside, you were talking of Abrahamic religions, right? Like Hitler, for example, committed so many crimes. So is one death sufficient enough to really punish him? Okay, but if you take that, I was just thinking, if you take that, if you extend that stand, Hitler committed so many crimes, but on the judgment day, he was sent to hell. And in hell, he had to go through multiple problems. Okay, whatever problems that the one gets in hell. Okay, and he exhausts all his sins because he goes through a lot of suffering in hell. But the where I saw that as something useful is in the Abrahamic religions, there is no concept of a rebirth. So because of no rebirth, you're automatically eliminating that step one in your cycle. Okay, because in our philosophy, we believe in rebirth, and rebirth is one of the ways to exhaust your karma. So we end up adding to the Sanchita karma in every life, to a certain extent. Okay, but if you take their stance, you die, you're punished so much in hell, but that's it. You don't take a rebirth, and therefore there is no step one again.
Got that. But to me, from a logical perspective, the first thing that doesn't make sense is that of eternity, eternal hell. Once you are in hell for all eternity. There is no escape. Now, whether you exhaust, and I'm looking at it purely from a statistical perspective, because that kind of thing makes more sense. I got a bit of a mathematical brain. So eternal hell and eternal heaven, to me, from this perspective, do not make sense, because it doesn't vibe. So is Hitler being punished up to a certain extent, and then after he exhausts that, he's still in hell? He's never going to come out of it. There is no end to it. So then what is going to happen to him then? And the same thing holds, for the people in heaven. The other thing is, to me personally, when I look at nature, everything looks cyclic, nothing looks linear. So in the Hindu concept of heaven and hell, we also have a concept of Swarga and Narak, heaven and hell. But what happens is this, again, from a statistical perspective, when your punya has reached a certain point where it has reached a huge amount, you have to exhaust it. So to exhaust it, you're being sent to heaven, where you're going to have a grand time. You want to enjoy yourself. The moment you exhaust it, you're back on earth again, and you're struggling to get moksha. So heaven does not mean moksha. It just means a better standard of life, probably. And if you have done too much of papa, you're now being pushed down into hell to exhaust it. And once you've exhausted it, you're coming back to neutral ground in order to start the machinations again. So this kind of thing makes more sense to me from a logical perspective. And again, at the beginning of this presentation, we talked about the very notion of sending a person to heaven or hell. So how would God make a judgment if a person did 50% good and 50% bad? Where would he send him? And they do not even have a Trishanku. So that doesn't make sense to me. And as I said, when I'm talking about the medians, for instance, a person does 49%, 45% good, 43% good, and the rest bad. So where does God draw the line? Where does he say, oh, at 20%, I'm going to send him into hell, and 40% I'm going to... Does that really make sense? What is driving God to do that? Because here, the point is, it's eternal, it's forever. There's no second chance, So from that perspective, the cyclic phenomena makes more sense to me. Yeah. Is that all right, Mr. Nagi?
Comment, Nagi?
Yeah, thank you. I was muted actually.
Most welcome.
Yeah, thank
Most welcome.
Vijay Kumar, do you have a question?
No.
Okay.
Sir.
Sure. Okay. Anyone else having any other question, please?
Yeah, Hemant.
Yes.
Yeah, just like I was thinking about, these are all the maybe the knowledge which you have read or we have heard from so many people. But is there any proof, like at least one proof, like where the previous Janma and this Janma, like some, is there any some witnessing happening, or is there any proof of kind of thing?
Anil,
Yeah.
I'm going to let me just deviate for a second. Okay.
Yeah.
So fortuitously today, by the way, this is the book that I have written. Okay. You can see the title, which says The Indian Mind at Work. And you can see here, it's not for sale. It's not for sale. So this is just a proof version which I received. I have not yet put it on the market. So, so Anil, there is a chapter in this book which is called The Hybrid Indian Mind. I'll tell you about it. So what's happened with us is our Indian traditional value system, yeah, is very different from the Western value system. Now, at the beginning, I made a brief mention about linearity and circularity or cyclicism. So, see, these people basically, where they're called, see, I'm going somewhere. I'm going to get to your answer, but I'm giving you this background for it. So these people, their Anglo-Saxon Protestant culture, basically, we are talking about the cultures that rule, the culture that dominates the world today, basically. Okay, it's the Anglo-Saxon Protestant culture, not the Roman Catholic culture. There's a difference. Now, Angles, Saxons, and Jutes were certain tribes that lived in Germany, Netherlands, and Denmark. Yeah, these people, as I said earlier, due to this high intensity of winters, they migrated to England in the 5th and 6th centuries. And they were also invited by a particular king over here to fight, a guy called Waltigen. He called them to fight as mercenaries against the Celts. So these people, as I mentioned earlier, they just had 5 or 6 months in a year during which they had to hunt, they had to wage wars, they had to build their shelters and do all these things. 6 or 7 months of the year were, dead in winter, they were gone. So they already became very, very conscious about time and resource management. It was critical to them. It was already ingrained in them. That's why Germans are so finicky about time. Yeah. So that is the first thing. The second thing is, these people now, once they come to England, they embrace Christianity. Christianity has a one life concept. So they merge these thoughts, of time and resource management and Christianity, taking the idea of one life, they extrapolate it, and the whole life becomes a plan. By this time I must do this, by this time I must do this, whatever it is. Okay. So these are certain characteristics that they develop. Okay. The next thing is, as I said, that winter is cyclic. Okay. It comes year after year, but they develop an anti-cyclic mentality because they have an aversion. They hate the winter. Even today, they hate winter over here. They just want to go to Goa and lie down on the beaches. We all know that. They love the sun. We don't get enough of sun over here, you see. And they have a dread of winter. So they develop this anti-cyclic mentality, which then gets merged with religion. It becomes linear. One life, one cosmology, one thing. Time becomes linear. It starts at this point and it ends at that point. The other tendency that they develop is they want to conquer nature externally. They want, and that is why all these psychologies that develop due to so many factors in them eventually make them want to conquer nature. And they start, when science begins to advance and science begins to develop, when the phenomenon of external observation, of empiricism, of measurements, yeah, see, they do not look inwards, they look outwards. They do not look inwards. We in India, we look inwards. We look at the mind and the brain, which is we prefer to look at the instrument of perception and decipher it rather than, the whole universe. We say that if we do it here, we will understand everything. Now, in India, we had a completely different system. We were not bothered about time because we have beautiful seasons. We don't have the stress of winter, So we have seasons that come, and then we always wait for one particular thing every year. We always did, and even now we do, and that is the monsoon. So while these people are hating the cycles of nature, winter, which keeps coming in, we are looking forward to it. So we are becoming pro-cyclic. These people are becoming anti-cyclic, and we are becoming pro-cyclic, you see. And we have a keen observation of life and death, because in temperatures which are high, decay is very evident. Like a body can decay and it can be destroyed in no time. We can see that visually, it's a visual. But in cold countries like this, it's not apparent, it's not evident. A body can lie in the cold for thousands of years. It's happened. Mummies have been found in Switzerland where, 3,000 years back, it's perfectly preserved. So for them, their entire psychological development is different. Now, what happens is then later on, these people embrace Protestantism. Okay, there's a different story behind that. I'm not going to go there. So once they become Protestants, work becomes everything. Work is worship. In fact, the word work as worship comes from Protestantism. A lot of Indians, and even me initially, I used to think it is karma yoga. It's not. It comes from Protestantism. It comes from Martin Luther. So work becomes everything, science becomes everything, empiricism becomes everything. Yeah. So when the British came and they began to rule us in India, it's a very, very interesting historic phenomenon. I mean, you really should go through this whole thing, So what happens is that they start the civil service, the East India Company, and because they need a lot of clerks and they need a lot of English speaking people and things like that. So they get people from England, but their business is growing. They're controlling the entire country. So now they need more and more people. So they decide to educate Indians in English. 1835, the English Education Act is passed. Lord Macaulay, who considers European culture to be so superior to Indian culture, he says, one shelf of books of Europe is much more than all the philosophies of Arabia and India put together. That was the monumental ignorance of the man. So he began to educate us in English, and we began this entire study of our minds, started going, and we were fascinated by their development, by their products. It's a product fascination, really, that makes you get enamored by a different culture. Yeah. So now our minds, we have our root culture. Yeah. In traditional Indian culture. However, what has also happened with the traditional Indian culture is that while we are doing the behaviors, that we have always been doing, we have stopped understanding it. We really have, a lot of us. And so eventually, on one hand, we are, there is a term called behavior persistence, which I have used in the book. That is, we just do it because we have been doing it all along. Yeah. For example, as an example, when we eat food, right, in India, I have seen people at the dining table put water around the plate. Now that is behavior persistence. Because in the old days, we sat on the ground and there was dust, and we had to stop the insects from coming in to our leaves because we ate on leaves. So we had to put water around it. But now we do it I've seen people doing it on the dining table. So that is behavior persistence. So, a lot of things that we do in Hinduism, for example, we go and attend some Sanskrit puja going on here. None of us understand a single word. I mean, very few. And we're just waiting for the pujari to finish and then behavior persistence. We call ourselves Hindus, but we're doing that, And on the other hand, we are getting enamored by the West, of their achievements, we've gone to the moon. Great. So what we do is we do what I like to call achievements to values association. So what we do is we think that achievements are equal to values. So these Gora people have, achieved so much and they have done so much. The white people, these countries have done so much. So now we must, if we pick up their values, then, we might reach those levels of aspirations ourselves. The issue here is that our value system and their value system are completely in conflict. Our value system, which is relational, which is dharma based, which is based on nature. In fact, dharma and nature are very closely connected, but that's out of the scope of this talk. So that is our core. And on the other hand, we have the Western value system, which we are emulating. We are not organic with it. We have not grown organically with it, because we have picked it up out of observation and out of a desire, let us say, to achieve aspirations. So observation and aspirations. Due to that, we have picked up their value system and we have our value system sitting inside us. So we have this hybrid thing, And Anil, that's where your question is coming from. Proof.
One thing, Hemant, I think Anil, I think he has lost his audio system. I think he's not able to.
Oh, is it?
Unfortunately,
sorry to hear.
Explanation, very excellent explanation you gave. Probably he's not hearing it. But I guess
You can probably
to tie it up is where you led us to is the very fact that we are questioning and asking for proof comes from this Anglo-Saxon Protestant influence.
It does. Absolutely, it does. Because what we need to do is, see, the thing is, this hybrid system that we have in us has left us neither here nor there. If we want answers to our value system, to Hinduism, to Sanatan, we have to go in there. We cannot look at it from the Western perspective. It will not work.
Right. No, that I completely agree with you. That was my biggest learning in life also.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Harinath, just one more thing. This when Anil was asking about examples, right? The more and more that we learn about karma and all this stuff, we also, at least to some extent, can start seeing examples. And one area I clearly see is this child prodigies. For example, this Mandolin Srinivas, Rahul Vellad, all right. At the age of 8 years, he is able to deliver great classical music concerts. Okay. Yeah, there is a concept of hard work, I understand, but there is a definite carryover from the previous life in some form. At the age of 7 to 8 years, he is able to give such a grand concert. So that definitely proves this point, actually.
Correct.
There are many logical ways. Correct. I agree with you that, you cannot have empirical evidence, in terms of measures and measurements. In fact, if you really look at it, measures and measurements have got great limitations, tremendous limitations. Of course, we see that, in matters of scale, if we go into the infinitesimal or if we go into, the larger constructs of the universe, conventional mathematics and conventional physics and all these things fail miserably. So yes, coming back to your point, absolutely. I do think that, by merely observing from a logical perspective, certain derivations and conclusions can certainly be made. about these things. And the very notion about karma is that, as I said, the whole question is like the universal justice thing. Why is a good person suffering? Why is somebody who's doing so much good? Why did Mahatma Gandhi, the apostle of non-violence, 3 bullets, So these are questions which beget answers, and the only logical explanation, unless you want to say God works in mysterious ways and put a blanket over it, the only other answer is that it has to come from somewhere else, from a past life.
I think, yeah, one more point where Nagi was also much of it. Sir,
Hello.
you have a question?
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. Please go ahead, Yogesh.
Hemant, good evening.
Good evening,
Yogesh
Yogesh.
Chakaria. I would like to add few things to your points.
Certainly.
You see, the way in which you are telling someone has got 50% good deeds and 50% bad deeds. So how he will evaluate and judge him or something like that, in whichever way, or religion or maybe. You see, as you have told, Abrahamic religions are all believing in one life only. And about that, Rajiv Malhotra has written a very extensively and very, very point-to-point discussion in his books. If you can go through those books, Rajiv Malhotra, being different, he is one of the most famous and most knowledgeable person. He has written 3-4 books on that. But adding to that, you see, you have started as if you are in a Mumbai, or you are in a Belgaum or Hubli somewhere, and you want to go to Belgaum, from Hubli to Belgaum. Okay. So you have started from Hubli and going to Belgaum. So while they're traveling, you have reached to midpoint. You have reached to the midpoint somewhere. But
Okay.
you know that your course is there, whatever it may be. But here what happens, the unknown energy or unknown entity or God, he puts and guides us into such a family where we can go progressively towards the moksha, slowly and slowly with our experiences with the various lives. How many times we have to born, take the life again, we don't know. Because this I have come to know through some of these years which I have got the contact. They were very highly knowledgeable. They were knowing about their past life and what is going to happen in future also. That also they were knowing. But then I asked them straight away, then why you are, because we have already reached to the moksha level, why you are doing all this? I have been given this duty to take this point up to that point. So these are the things happens in our life. And because due to our past life, habitual behavior which we have inherited in our this life, accordingly we take the birth in the next life, where we can go progressively further in our life, maybe in whatever our desires are there in the past life. Our desire has become in past life, before passing away, we may have the desire to become Dhirubhai. We may get that in the next life to certain extent, and you may get the birth in certain family where you can gain financial security or abundance in finance. And then also again on that Sanchit Karma, how to cut that. Saints have told us, you take the name of the God, do any karma, like Krishna, do any karma and give it to me. हिंदी में कहते हैं उसको अर्पण कर दो भगवान को, whatever. In the morning when you get up, in the evening when you go to bed, you tell to the prayer to the God, whatever you have suggested and whatever way you have guided me, I have tried to do my karma in the best way of whatever I can do. The same things I am giving it back to you. Because I am incapable to do anything. This is the one way of
Yogesh, yeah.
getting rid of our karmas and giving the karma back to the our account. Sorry.
Absolutely, Yogesh. See, all that it is Krishna talks about 3 yogas, isn't it?
Yeah.
He talks about karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga.
Yeah.
So you are talking about bhakti yoga. The effect is the same.
हाँ,
So when you are doing, जब किसी को अर्पण करते हैं कुछ ऊपर वाले को,
हाँ,
तो हमारे यहाँ मन में काम नहीं होता, वो निष्काम हो जाता है, वही सत्व हो जाता है.
हाँ,
तो असर वही है,
हाँ.
मार्ग अलग है.
The reason is that because there are different, as we have solved tamas, rajas and sattva, there are various types of people and various types of existence. So everyone has got his own way of going towards that God. So there are different ways to reach that place. From Hubli to Dharwad, you have to go different ways. You can reach it. A simple way. There is not a single way. There are so many ways. And there is another one. David Hawkins is there. David Hawkins. He has written
Stephen
a good
Hawkins?
book on Stephen. David Hawkins.
Not Stephen. David. Okay.
David Hawkins. He has written a few books: Power versus Force, Transcending the Levels of Consciousness. Transcending the levels of consciousness, where he has not mentioned the karma theory, but he has mentioned the present condition of the world and present condition of the universe, in which level the people are there. Say nearly 85% people or the population is there at the tamas level, and the remaining 15% at the very high level. They are balancing the 85% people, those who are living at the tamas level. And he has given various gradings from 0 to 1000.
Mm-hmm.
It is excellent books. If you try to get it and you go through that, you will get some new view on the other things also.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other question or?
Are we okay then?
Yeah. I think no more questions. Anything else you want to share more, Hemant?
That's about it. Yeah.
Oh, Anil sir is back. So Anil sir.
Hemant, can you
welcome back.
little bit about your book?
No, Anil sir, when I think there was an elaborate answer to your question, but I think most of it you missed, it looks like.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Fine.
Yeah. Okay. About the book. Certainly. So basically, this particular book, as I said, the past several years, there has been a lot of. Let's say I have been made to write the book. it's taken me there. So a lot of trying to understand the different psychologies, and as Yogesh just mentioned, about one of the points that came to my mind then was that one of the primary differences that we have between us Indians and the rest of the world, and I'm saying the rest of the world, and when I say Indians, I basically mean the Indian subcontinent and probably a little surrounding area because of the sphere of influence. It is this. It's the logical construct in the mind. And this is also part of my research and part of the book. In Western countries, particularly the Anglo-Saxon Protestant countries, like America, France, Germany, United Kingdom, most of these, so-called advanced countries, we find that there is a certain kind of logic which dominates their mind. Let's look at that. Basically, there are 3 kinds of logic. One is binary logic, where you have 2 answers, yes, no, black, white. Then you have fuzzy logic, where you have absolute lie and absolute truth, and in between you have degrees of truth. The best example of fuzzy logic would be in crime. Let's say somebody has killed somebody, and if you're going to apply binary logic there, then you have to hang that person as a punishment. But if you apply fuzzy logic, then you will start thinking, was it an accident? Was it negligent homicide? Was it premeditated murder? Was it first degree? Was it second degree? Was it self-defense? Self-defense, you might even leave that person. You might not arrest him or sentence that person at all. So there could be degrees of sentencing according to the act. So that is fuzzy logic. And then we have multi-valued logic, which is a very rare kind of logic where all the values are true. There are more than two values and all of them are true. So in a rare instance, it might be that, a man loves all his 3 children equally, just as the loose example, or he likes, 3 different dishes equally, just a loose example of multi-valued logic. Now, what happens in cultures is, in these cultures, the Anglo-Saxon Protestant cultures, the heavy, heavy predominance is of binary logic. It's always 2, yes or no. That is why in these cultures, you will find questions like, there is polarization, there are dichotomies. So, are you for the death penalty? Are you against the death penalty? Are you for abortion? Are you against abortion? Are you right-wing? Are you left-wing? Are you this? Are you that? Are you conservative? Are you liberal? You have to take a stance and you have to debate and you have to hold on to your stance. So all these people are like that. They're dominated by that. Yeah. Now, this kind of mentality is suitable for certain things. It is very decisive because they decide immediately, they take sides. They communicate fast. There is no, thinking pause in their communication because they have already decided, they have taken sides. Yeah. And they debate to win, not to find the truth. Yeah, there's a difference. Because winning and losing is very important to them. That comes from Greece, from the Greek Olympic Games. So all these things influence the culture and cultural psychology of people. So then this binary logic predominance also makes people very decisive. They make quick decisions. And this kind of mentality is conducive for the kind of structure that they have over here and the kind of structure they have evolved over the centuries or the millennia. Structure both in terms of science, in terms of management, in terms of it's their organic evolution, along with this notion of binary logic. Now, this binary logic predominance also has a great amount of conflict in it at an extreme level. Look at, if you look at Abrahamic religions and if you look at evangelism in particular, essentially, their belief is this: if my God is God, then your God is not God. It's binary. There's only one answer. One is true, the other is false. So that is what governs them. And that is very conflict oriented. And that is why they fought the Crusades, they fight wars. Even today, there are always differences, That is why by ruling this entire world, these people created boundaries everywhere, political boundaries of countries, of nations, of this, of that. They divide. They do not unite. There is no unification. There is division. And now they are struggling with the opposite. Now they're talking about acceptance and diversity and all these things because it's not making commercial sense anymore. Anyway, that is their predominance. In India, we have a very unique kind of mind. Now in India, we have all 3 logic nodes, binary, fuzzy, as well as multi-valued logic sitting, and we have a decision point on top. And we are very pacifist, but we generally have a predominance of multi-valued logic. The reason, see, if you look at our ethos in India, our belief system, our evolution, our social, cultural belief evolution over the millennia, through Hinduism, Jainism, through our entire system, the development of various philosophies, the various kinds of debates. And then we had debates not to win, but to merge, but to get an understanding, basically. So if we look at that system, the multi-valued logic is what predominates. 6 orthodox philosophies, some of them do not agree with each other. Mimamsa, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Vedanta, they do not agree with each other, but they all sit under one umbrella, multi-valued. The polytheistic aspect of Hinduism. For example, if you ask a Hindu, is Ganesha God? He will say, yes, Ganesha is God. Is Shiva God? Yes, Shiva is God. Is Durga God? Yes. Is Allah God? He will not say he is not God. He will say he is the God of the Muslims. If you ask him, is Jesus God? He will say, the Christians. He will not say, no, Jesus is not God. Now, this is the effect of multi-valued logic predominance. So that's what, when Yogesh mentioned that in our ethos, we have different paths, we have different ways, all of which are heading towards the same goal. So we have respect for each other's paths. And as a prime example, if you look at Europe, they have less number of languages than India, less cultural complexity and diversity than India. And they're already divided into so many countries, 28 countries already. And here in India, with much more massive complexity of culture, language, diversity, everything way beyond what Europe can imagine, we are still one country because of multi-valued logic predominance. So this is the kind of thing that has gone into the understanding of the book, of trying to create an understanding of how we are different from them, for us to understand ourselves and to understand them, and for them to understand themselves, as well as us, because understanding between two different cultures creates empathy. So once we have that understanding, we will then be able to work better together. We will understand the expectations. We need to understand why they are so obsessed with time. They need to understand why Indians really don't care so much about time. As I said, I worked for 21 years in IT. I have experienced this kind of situations where people in Britain and America, they get so extremely frustrated. They say, why don't Indians understand? And when an Indian says yes, does he really mean a yes? We do this, right? It scares them because they're like, somebody asks, one of our guys, he says, can you deliver this by Friday? And we are like, and Friday it's not there. So these people, binary logic dominated, to them a yes is a yes. They lose it, and we have a lot of problems in work. So, but why do we behave like that? Now, why did our Indian even wobble his head and say yes? We have a lot of issues, actually. So the book attempts to go into a very detailed analysis of the Indian mind and its evolution since the advent of the British, since the British actually landed in India and began to influence us. So our hybrid culture, where those behaviors come from, what are we actually doing, and what do we probably need to do about it? So I have a list of traits and characteristics of Indians also. It is not meant to be a criticism, but let me call it a critical analysis with the objective of self-analysis, introspection, understanding, and application in real life terms in order to achieve the aspirations that you need to achieve, really. So for instance, some of the negative things that we have as Indians, we have what I like to call national development lag complex. So honestly, the first term that came to my mind was inferiority complex, but I didn't want to use such a harsh term because it isn't also truly an inferiority complex. But whenever most Indians encounter somebody from America or from Germany or from something, we develop a kind of complex. And I like to call it as national development lag, because India is lagging in terms of development nationally. We sense that, and we give them more respect than is proportionally required, really. We hand over power to them subconsciously, and in doing so, we lose part of our own identity. And we have something which I like to call as the foreign validation syndrome. So anything that these people say, we pat ourselves on the back. For example, Ashish Satyarthi, nobody in India knew who he was, until he was awarded the Nobel Prize. And immediately we look up and say, who is Ashish Satyarthi? Oh, he saved 85,000 children from child traffickers. But up until then, we didn't even bother and look as to, who he is. The moment we get a validation from here, we sit up and take notice. So I think we have, over the centuries, developed certain traits and characteristics which are not helping us. And one of these behaviors is that we generally tend to pick up something from the West blindly and apply it to India. Now, as I said, India is a circular, cyclic thought process culture. We are not oriented towards linearity. These people are oriented towards linearity because their organic development happened in that manner. Ours did not. But we have adopted their system. We are trying to emulate it. The best example you can see is in traffic. So if there is a path to cut across the line and the person will not bother. He will ignore the one way. Yeah. So why do we Indians, for example, again, that's also part of the book, why do we not follow rules? We all know that Indians don't follow rules. I don't follow rules. For example, I'll give you an example. Yesterday, when I was crossing the road over here, just in front of my house, so I punched the pedestrian button. Yeah, and you have to wait until the green light comes up. So I punch it and I'm waiting. And then I look around, there's no traffic. So I just go, I cross the road. But the white people are standing there. The British people are standing there. They're not going to cross the road. They're going to wait until it turns green, even if there is no traffic coming down. But me, I'm Indian. I just went across. Why did I do that? The reason is we have brought in a legal system from the West, and we have dumped it on India. Our mind works in an organic manner, which was organic to India, which is the cyclic Indian manner. It's not linear. So these laws have been dumped upon us. Example, are Indians law abiding? You know what? Most of us would think that is Papa, I should not do it. That is Punya, I want to do that. We still tend to think along those lines rather than, oh, that's the law, I must follow it, or that's the law, I must not follow it. No, that doesn't make sense to us because that is not organic to us. For us, it has been the system of dharma, which is in our genetic DNA, which is in our psychological DNA, rather, translated over the centuries and millennia. So, yeah, it kind of, covers subjects like that, as well as actual interaction during work-related scenarios, what happens, and things like that. It's just an attempt, basically, to both analyze these two distinct cultures and assist both to kind of interact and work more productively with each other. Yeah.
Fine, sir. Thank you, Hemant, for this wonderful lecture. With this,
Most welcome. And thank you so much for the opportunity.
You're welcome, most welcome. And as Professor Moody, be part of our WhatsApp group, and we'll actively keep sharing ideas. And I also
Harinath, I just want to make one small comment.
Sure, Nagi, please go ahead.
I was very, very happy, Hemant, on the analysis that you put in your book, right? Various types of analysis. It's pretty eye-opening. Okay, really, thanks a lot for sharing that.
Thank you.
Most welcome. Most welcome.
Sure. Okay, so we end the session with Shanti Mantra. सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति
Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.